All right. Hey, good morning. It's Tuesday, Thanksgiving week. So looking forward to just enjoying this season right here. Right. We can move past Christmas, and I'm not bashing that. I'm just saying I want to be right here, though. I just want to be grateful for the things that God's given to us. We're anticipating a full house Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. All of our kiddos, everybody that kind of comes from me and the Tamster, amounts to what I call 19 and a half. We have a grandson on the way. And so looking forward to just the time with family. And I hope you are. I hope you got people to hang out with, to love on, just to enjoy. I'm grateful for my family. I'm grateful for the truth of God's word. Man, there's so much to be grateful for. And so hope you're doing that, taking stock of just your blessings. And please don't let it be just about material blessings, right? It ought to be about all the other. And so, in fact, that's the message today. And so, let's just jump into it, right? Jesus is in his last year, half a year of ministry left. He has taught what he's going to teach in that sense. And I'm not saying he's packing it in. I'm just saying that he has taught and people have made decisions. They are either all in or they're not. And then you've got a few, and I think that's who he's still addressing here because he calls them disciples. But he is wandering through village after village of those where the 70 had gone and kind of plowed the ground, so to speak. And so Jesus is zigzagging across the country, different villages. And as he's going, the crowds have gotten greater, so much so it's innumerable in some sense. And they're stepping all over each other just to kind of get close enough, pushing everybody in, trying to hear what he's saying. And so he's had several encounters with the Pharisees. He has talked really at great length about some powerful truths and things that we need to speak about. He in this section, he's just finished the conversation dealing with the Pharisees, their hypocrisy, and their greed, and that this is a wicked generation. So that's his indictment. That's what I'm telling you. We're seeing more of a judgmental type, not in a mean spirited way. This is a holy God who's just judging rightly the people of where they are in this station in life in which they find themselves, and so he has chastised them about that, and he's looked to the Pharisees. He's saying you're a wicked generation, and that you are greedy and you're hypocrites. And then he began to say, now to the crowd, to the disciples, those who are learning. There's a curious in the crowd. They're neither learning or what. They're just there for the party. Then you got those who are like interested in what Jesus is saying, and they're the disciples. And then you got the Pharisees and the Sadducees and the scribes and all of that, trying to upset and find a way to dismantle the power and authority that Jesus seems to be amassing. And so they've got their plot, and that's what's going on. And so in the middle of that, Jesus is looking at the disciples, those not just the 12, not just the 20, the 70 that were sent out, but a large size group of people. And he is telling them, listen, don't you fear man. Don't you fear those Pharisees who are telling you what to do. All they can do is kill you in a sense. You fear the one who can kill you, and after that, send your soul to hell. And so then he began to say about what it means to, that's your relationship with God. Fear God. Your relationship to the Lord, right? And he began to talk about that. And the aspect that he is Lord of all, right? That Jesus is Lord. And then, that we should confess him before men, right? If he is who we say he is, he is who he says he is. If he is who we believe him to be, then we should confess him before men and be not ashamed of that. And then we draw heavily on the Holy Spirit to give us that understanding of those things. So then we come down to here, and out of the crowd, which is not unusual. It seems kind of weird here. This is just kind of like random. Where did that come from? But people would often pose rabbis a question because they were curious. They had something on their heart. It was back in man, when I was a baby. I think it was a Dear Abby. You would write in her column because you wanted advice from her, and so she was just Dear Abby. Um, and so now you've got all sorts of gurus who think themselves that, and people ask them questions and about things, and they always give space for that, and they give an answer. This is what a rabbi would do. He would teach, and then people would ask questions, and he would apply truth to that situation. And so this is what that is. Let's don't make more of it than it is. And here's what it says. Now, someone in the crowd said to him, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the family inheritance with me." So randomly, here it is, right? We're going to talk about stuff, right? So you just got me thinking, like I sit in my garage. My high dollar studio here is one bay of my garage that I've turned into a studio for doing all sorts of things. I've got about 3 or 4 sets in here. I can teach and do whatever I want to do. My car's sitting right there, and we got junk everywhere, right? And so you begin to think, well, why do I have all this stuff, right? I mean, I look around, and there's just stuff everywhere in my garage. You have a basement. What's in there? Go into your attic. We were in our attic the other day because I was moving some pipes and I was putting some water in a little apartment we're working on up there. And man, our attic is filled with stuff. And I don't. Why? What do we do? And then we have a storage house. What do you call those things? Where you drive up and unlock it and put your stuff in there. Why? Why? I mean, and all this stuff. I mean, I like what we got, but why do we have so much stuff? And Jesus is going to talk about the danger of stuff. Really, if we're not careful, it becomes an issue, right? It can become an idol. This is kind of what he's going to be speaking about, but it can be, right? We equate stuff with value, right? So our stuff determines our value. If we don't have much, well, we're just poor. If we have an overabundance, well, then we're rich. And so I don't know if psychologically that's what drives that, but that's a psychological landmine that we kind of wade into. But anyway, this guy yells out in the crowd, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide his inheritance with me." Now, in that culture, when a family, when the patriarch passed away, the big brother inherits everything, and then he becomes a pseudo-dad and begins to distribute things out. You saw sort of that with the prodigal son, although that dad did kind of go ahead and give his son kind of an inheritance, a share of it, right? And that created turmoil between the brother, the other brother. And so it's a similar situation here. Big brother's got all the stuff, and little brother's like, "I'm tired of him handing me out what I need. I don't want to have to ask my brother for permission for stuff. I want my own." And so this is his complaint. Tell him to do what's right, what's fair. That's fair. We're brothers, right? And so this is the question that comes up. Jesus looks right past the issue. He doesn't address it. Look what he says. In fact, he kind of seems kind of snarky, and that's a terrible term to use, I guess. He's not really, but listen to what it says. He says, "You there? Hey, you." So the guy's yelling, "Tell my brother." So he looks for him, finds him. "Hey, you there, right? Who appointed me a judge or arbitrator over the two of you? Who? I didn't come here to do this. This isn't. I'm bringing life, right?" Now, he doesn't see that as a nuisance or a distraction. He sees it as an opportunity to teach about greed, which is where we're going today, and which is what he's going to talk about. So let's just jump in there with him and see what he says. But he said to them, right? So he tells this guy, "Hey, man, what? No, I don't have time. I don't have time for that question. I don't even know the context. I mean, obviously he does because he's God, but the context. Are you a scoundrel? What's going on here?" But he says this. But he said to them, right? So he's not now. Potentially that them could be him and his brother, who I guess was standing beside him, because he's saying, "Tell my brother," almost like Martha did with Mary, right? Tell her. But anyway, he says to them, "Beware." Now that's a powerful word. Beware, right? You see a sign that says "Beware," you're like looking around, like what's happening, right? You're looking for that big dog. You're looking for some sort of animal that's loose or whatever. And he says, "Beware, and to be on your guard against every form of greed. For not even when one is affluent does his life consist of his possessions." So he looks right past the deal and moves straight straight to greed. Greed in every form. Like there's levels of greed. There's different degrees of greed, right? We've all seen the greedy miser, the Scrooge, right? We've seen that, but we've also seen the psychological greedy person who wants to pretend they're giving stuff for show, but that's all it was. They're still keeping all that stuff, right? It's just a show deal, right? They want you to think that they're generous, but in fact they're greedy, and so there's all sorts of forms. Money's a tricky thing, right? Because we need it. I mean, we do. It does help, right? I mean, that's the currency in which we use, whether we barter for things but we need it in order to get things that we believe we need to live. But we're not supposed to want it, right? In that sense, it's almost like that. It's that medicine that can bring healing, but it can also destroy you. And so there's that. Be careful about those things. Lots of dangers are lurking in money, and Paul spoke of that. Paul says in 1 Timothy 6, powerful phrase, but godliness actually is a means of great gain when accompanied by contentment. Listen, godliness is of greater gain than anything else when you're content, and this is his point. For we have brought nothing into the world, so we can take anything out. If we have food and covering, with these we shall be content. Those are the two basic needs. I got a roof over my head, and I've got food in my belly. But those who want to get rich fall into temptation and trap, and many foolish and harmful desires which plunge people into ruin and destruction. Man, money is an opportunity for all sorts of things that can take place. You know, I can choose to be greedy. I can choose to use it to manipulate people. There's a lot of things that I can use it to feel good, right? I mean, there's all kinds of things we can do to it, all sorts of temptations. For the love of money is a root of all sorts of evil, and some longing for it have wandered away from the faith and pierced themselves with many griefs. But flee from these things, you man of God. Pursue righteousness, godliness, faith, love, perseverance, gentleness, right? So this is the message. Now, Jesus, that's his statement. That's what he's saying. Listen, money never satisfies. It's like that addiction. You never get enough, right? It's always a little bit more. And so it's terrible. Addiction is a terrible thing. And so this is one of those. Life isn't about how much you can collect. The whole book of Ecclesiastes was all about that. And so he gets to verse 14. He goes, bro, that's not your issue. Your issue isn't that. Beware. Be on guard. Every form of greed. Life does not equate to possessions. And that's what he's saying. What you possess does not define who you are. Man, there was a time in our younger days, our kids were small, probably, under 7. We had 3 of them. And in ministry, you do what you do. We were putting them in Christian school, so we had to figure things out. We got this old Ford Granada from Tammy's aunt who had passed away. And we packed that thing in. We had to wedge the sunroof because it would leak. The windows wouldn't roll up or down, and it was just this. I mean, but it got us where we wanted to go. We were down in Panama City one year with that car hanging out. We rode by an ugly duckling car lot, and all that was in there were these Ford Granadas, exactly like we were looking. And I'm wanting my kids not to see that, so they go, Dad, y'all, we're poor, aren't we? And we look back on that, and we were grateful for that. But listen, that Ford Granada didn't define who we were or what we were, although sometimes it made you feel like that, right? And so now it's story time. This is what Jesus is going to do. Now it's story time. So he tells them a story. And he told them a parable saying, the land of a rich man was very productive. Now, this is just a story. I don't know if he's making this up, but this is the story. The life of a rich man was very productive. That word productive there is our word for euphoric, right? It brought about this euphoria. Productivity brings a certain euphoria, right? When you win the lottery in that sense, or you did work and you finish it and it looks great, or here the ground produces great deal, good crop. That's really how it's defined, but it is the place where we get our word euphoria. A good crop equals elation, right? I mean, you're like, woohoo, we won, right? Because a farmer, he plants, he can't make anything happen. He's trusting in rain. He's trusting in soil. He's trusting that he can keep all the vermin away that would want to get into it. And so, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. God causes increase, but he didn't notice that. So he's euphoric, right? And he's like, oh man, I have won the lottery. I've got tons of stuff. And he says, what shall I do? This is the story. Let's read it. The land of the rich man was very productive. And he began thinking to himself, self, what shall I do? Since I have no place to store my crops. So that's a great question. What am I going to do? I have this abundance of stuff. What will I do? Now, he could have said, well, I'm going to give it away. I mean, the Lord's blessed me, and I'm going to give it away. I'm going to do that. Or he could have said, I think I'm just going to, maybe I'll just sell it, right? I mean, I can use that money for all sorts of things. Maybe I'll just sell it. No, he could have built bigger barns, but then that would have taken up some of that land that was really euphoric, right? And so what does he say? I'm going to tear down the barns I have, and I'm going to build bigger barns. Why wouldn't you just add a barn? Again, my thought, because the land is valuable. So he's going to tear a barn down and build a bigger barn. For what? Look what it says. The land of the missionary is very productive, and he began thinking to himself, saying, what shall I do since I have no place to store my crops? And he said, this is what I will do. I will tear down my barns and build larger ones, and I will store my grain and my stuff there. So this isn't just all about the grain. He has a storehouse of grain, but he's also wanting stuff to just put all his goods there. Everything that he's getting ready to amass based on all this goodness, right? And I will say to myself, you have many goods stored up for many years to come. Relax, eat, drink, and enjoy, right? I'll coast through life, he's saying. Man, this is going to be easy peasy, right? No consideration there for God. No, like, hey, God's the one who caused the rain to come. God's the one who gave us the seed to plant. God's the one who allowed me to have this productive soil that I've got. Maybe I should confide in God. There's something about money. We always talk about it until we get it. And then rarely do we pray about what we should do with it. He didn't think about God. He didn't think about others. And he certainly didn't think about death, which is the issue. And so this is what it says. And he said, this is what I will do. Verse 18, I will tear down my barns, and I will build bigger barns, and I will store my grain and my goods there. And I will say to myself, you have many goods stored up for many years to come. Eat, relax, drink, and enjoy yourself. But God said to him, you fool, you foolish one, you man of small thinking, you man who did not take into account that there is a God in heaven. You fool. This is the fool who says in his heart there is no God, or gives no consideration toward God, right? Not just the atheist, but it's also those who know there is a God, but do not give consideration to God. He says, this very night your soul is demanded of you. And as for all that you have prepared, who's going to own it now? Right? So that's kind of a hint back to the boys. Like, hey man, my brother's got all the stuff, I want it. Well, you're going to get it. If I said, yeah, give it all to him, how do you know this is not going to end your life? And then someone else will inherit it. That was the frustration that Solomon said. Man, I'm going to earn all this stuff, and my kids who did nothing to get it, I'm going to die, and I'm going to pass it on to them, and they didn't earn it, and they're going to waste it. And my life, that all of this stuff got me to, feels like it's a waste of life. This is the thing about thinking too much about our possessions and our stuff, right? That's why James says this in chapter 4. Come now, you who say today or tomorrow we will go to such and such a city and spend a year there and engage in business there and make a profit. We just live like we're going to live forever. Yet you do not know what your life will be like tomorrow, for you are just a vapor that appears for a little while and then vanishes away. Instead, you ought to say, if the Lord wills, we will live and do this or that. But as for you, you boast in your arrogance, and such boasting is evil. Wow. Now, let's come back to our story. He says, so he just explained that, and he says, verse 21, this is the summation of everything. Such is the one. You want to know what you're like? You're like that rich man who was euphoric about his stuff. And instead of being a careful steward of it, like sending it up to heaven and treasure up your treasure in heaven, how do you do that? By giving it away, by meeting the needs of the poor and the orphan, the widow, right? All of that. You just decided to store it up, and you had no idea that you were going to be bankrupt because that stuff stored stuff doesn't translate to riches in heaven. And so when you get to heaven, you're a pauper. Listen to what he says. Such is the one who stores up treasure for himself and is not rich in relation to God. Man, you failed to think about honoring God in the stuff that you have. Man, this is a sobering reminder that we are just mere stewards, loosely, of stuff. So hold on to it, loosely, because it's fleeting. When you find someone has a need, be generous to that. Don't be so greedy. That's the issue that he's talking about. Man, Lord bless you guys. What a great message in light of this Thanksgiving week, right? I'll see you tomorrow, Lord willing.